let's dive right in. Today, we're breaking down a huge new law that is completely rewriting the rules for real estate investors in the US. Seriously, if you own property or you're even thinking about it, the playbook you thought you knew just got thrown out the window. So let's get into it. Okay, first things first, you have to understand the sheer scale of what we're talking about. This new fiscal package is a 3.3 times trillion-dollar commitment. A number that big doesn't just make a splash. For the world of real estate, it's a full-on tidal wave.
And here's the name you need to know: the Open Borders for Business Act, or the OBB Act for short. It was passed on July 4th, 2025. And look, this is not some minor tweak to the tax code. No. This is a fundamental, ground-up rewrite that's going to define how people invest for the next decade, at least. So where do we start? Well, let's start with the good stuff, right? The parts of this law that are basically like a gift for investors. What are the new opportunities, the new tools that have just been dropped on the table? First up is a big one: bonus depreciation. The OBB Act puts this tool on steroids. It basically lets you take a massive chunk of your deductions and pull them forward into year one. The impact that has on your immediate cash flow, on your IRR, it's just profound.
So what's the new rate we're talking about under this act? 100%. And get this, it's not some temporary thing that's going to phase out. It is permanently restored to 100%. For an investor's liquidity, that is an absolute, undeniable game changer. So what actually qualifies for this amazing deal? Well, it applies to properties bought after January 20th, 2025, and it covers major capital improvements. You know, the big stuff like putting on a new roof or swapping out the entire HVAC system. Plus, there's a nice little kicker: 100% depreciation for new industrial buildings, at least for a while. That runs through 2031. It's a very clear signal of what they want to see built.
Now, let's talk about the one thing that had so many investors holding their breath. There was a ton of uncertainty floating around about the future of 1031 exchanges. Well, you can finally exhale. The OBB Act leaves them completely intact. That critical tool for deferring capital gains and growing your portfolio is safe. I think you can almost hear the collective sigh of relief from the entire industry on this one. Okay, next up is the Qualified Business Income Deduction, or QBI. For the millions of you who run your investments through pass-through structures, like LLCs, this 20% deduction is an absolutely critical tool for bringing down your effective tax rate. And the huge news here is one simple word: permanence. That 20% deduction is no longer this temporary thing that you have to worry it might vanish every few years. It's now a permanent, baked-in part of the tax code. That kind of stability, that certainty, it's absolutely essential if you're trying to do any kind of long-term planning. And there's one last powerful incentive we need to talk about: opportunity zones. That program designed to push investment into economically struggling areas, they're also being made permanent. And you can really see the logic of the law here. Not only are they here to stay, but now they come with extra benefits if they're located in rural areas, really encouraging investors to look beyond the usual big city markets. Okay, so we've looked at all the gifts, a whole suite of incredibly powerful tax incentives. But this is where our explainer has to take a really crucial turn. See, these tools don't exist in a vacuum. They create a whole new strategic mandate. They demand a pivot in how you have to think. Which brings us to a really important question. I mean, with 100% bonus depreciation, permanent QBI, and secure 1031s, you would think this makes investing in real estate way easier, right? Well, the answer, and this might surprise you, is no. In many ways, it actually makes it more complex. And here's why. And this is the key point. Success isn't about just riding broad market trends anymore. You can't just look at citywide data and call it a day. The OBB Act forces a strategic shift. You have to move from that big macro-level picture to what you could call surgical micro-level analysis. The devil and the real opportunity is now completely in the details. So what does that actually look like? It means you have to go deeper than you ever have before. We're talking about knowing the growth projections for a specific neighborhood, not just the city. You need to understand the demographic shifts on a hyper-local level, know about the confirmed infrastructure projects happening block by block, and you have to get on the ground yourself and see which businesses are actually doing well. That kind of deep, local knowledge is no longer a nice to have, it's the price of admission. Now, as we all know, no major reform comes without a flip side. For every gift, there's usually a gotcha. So let's look at the other side of the OBB Act, the risks and the economic headwinds that every investor is now going to have to figure out how to navigate. All that stimulus isn't free. The CBO is estimating this law will add about $2.8 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade, and that kind of spending always has consequences. And that leads us to the central paradox of this new law. On the one hand, you've got these incredible tax incentives designed to get you to build new projects and do renovations. But on the other hand, the huge amount of government spending needed to fund it all could easily fuel inflation and contribute to keeping interest rates high. And this quote just sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? The irony is that the law could end up making it way more expensive to get a loan for the exact same projects it's trying to encourage. It's this fundamental tension that every single investor is now going to have to model out and plan for. And there's another specific gotcha to be aware of. To help pay for all this, some tax credits had to be eliminated, and a big one was credits tied to energy efficiency. So for any investors out there focused on green building, this could directly hit your projected return on investment. You've got to go back and recalculate. Okay, so we've got the gifts, the strategic pivot, and the gotchas. What does this all mean for you, practically? Let's put it all together into a clear, actionable playbook for navigating this new world. Here are the 4 pillars of your new strategy. 1. Plan your renovations with meticulous care to maximize every penny of those 100% depreciation benefits. 2. Optimize your corporate structure to fully leverage the permanent QBI deduction. 3. Analyze your financing options with a hawk's eye, working under the assumption that rates could stay high. And 4, maybe the most important of all, leverage that hyper-local, surgical knowledge to find the real hidden gems, especially in those now permanent opportunity zones. And that leaves us with one final, crucial question to think about. We are in uncharted territory here. A mix of massive government stimulus running headlong into a high interest rate environment. How will this combination permanently reconfigure not just property values, but the very definition of what we consider risk and reward in the real estate market for years to come? That is the billion or maybe even $1 trillion question. Thanks for joining this explainer.
Maybe you should just